Hello, welcome to P Cube, the one and only Pokemon Cube podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Martin, brought to you with co-host Connor Lavelle. We are bringing you with episode 13. Hello, Connor. How's it going?
Going well. How about you, Andrew?
So Cube League, you're pretty much guaranteed at this point, right? 5-1.
Yep, I am locked. So that is a nice spot to be in. I was really afraid my last round I got paired against Odysseus, who I would consider to be my worst matchup in the event. Just has lots of really scary stuff he can do against my deck. But I was able to pull the match out with some tricky plays. Faba being just a really clutch card in a lot of ways. So it was very satisfying and excited to make top 8 and hopefully make it past top 8 this time. Last month or last league did get knocked out in the top 8. Hopefully this time I can push on to top 4 at least, and then I'll lock up my 80 points for a 2-round bye at Champions Cube.
Sick. I am currently 4-1, so I have to play. Actually, playing against the 5-0 Vic. His deck was very good. I played against a deck similar to his, but did not have the Claydol. So I'm interested to see how that matchup goes. I think we're playing our game. I think we'll have played our game by the time this podcast episode goes up. So I will know by then if I am a 5-1 or a 4-2. Although, can we talk about the resistance this go around? I know we were talking about this earlier, and it's really weird, isn't it?
Yeah. So normally, when we get toward the end of a league, I'll sit down, do some math, kind of calculate out, this person could end up here, and this is exactly how many of each records we have. But this time, something has happened that has really never happened before, and that's, except for just a couple of people, all the resistance is really tight. Like, people are very, very close together. So it's hard to estimate very well. Like, you could still do the same math, but you can't really make any assumptions because there's so much outstanding stuff. And also, Limitless makes it a little bit harder than Battlefy because Limitless doesn't update resistance live, whereas Battlefy, like, as soon as the game is done, it's factored into standings. Limitless doesn't factor it in until the round is finished. So makes it a little bit more difficult, makes it a little bit more effort intensive. But so it's really hard to say as far as the bubble, who is in the best shape. Now, if you lose, I imagine you'll be in excellent shape because you'll have the 6-0 on your record, and that's the best person in the event to have on your record. But the last round is really going to change a lot for people because even if you were 4-1, you went down to 4-2, maybe your resistance isn't great. Now you have a 5-1 on your record. So that's an 86.67% win rate. That is going to go onto your opponent's win percentage. So it's a lot to think about. And this time it is so close that really nobody is safe. Everybody is kind of battling it out for these last few spots in top 8. And we'll either have 3 or 4, depending on the result of your match, actually. If you win, then we'll have 3, and if you lose, then we'll have, or no, I think I'm one off. I think it's either 3 or 4, not 4 or 5. I don't know. I'm not looking at it right now, but essentially about half of the top cut will be 4-2s. So,
oh man,
there are a lot of people fighting for those spots.
Yeah, it's actually, it's just really weird. I just don't remember these situations being so tight, but I personally, like, for seeding wise, would prefer to win this round, but as long as I cut, I feel pretty happy.
Yeah, I mean, top 8, especially nowadays, is so difficult to do. It's like the top quarter of the event. A lot of rounds to play through, a lot of very good decks, especially in this event where decks are generally very good. So it's quite difficult to make it to top 8 at all, and that's an accomplishment in and of itself for sure. I would say I'm the same way. Once I hit top 8, I feel pretty good, but I definitely feel like top 8 is not. I'm not quite happy yet with top 8. I feel like top 4 is where I really start to feel good about it. So
yeah, I feel like for me personally, like how like tight these matchups have been, I'm like, if I make the top 8, I've completed my mission.
Yeah, especially with a deck like yours too, where like you're going in and
control.
It looks really strong on paper, but like with control, you never know. Like, are there tools out there that deal with your deck in a way that you don't expect? And so I think anytime you can pilot a control deck to a strong finish, you know that you can be satisfied that you played well because your deck's performance is very, very heavily dependent on your personal play. And also that you constructed a very good deck because it didn't just have auto losses out in the field. to like random acceleration or whatever.
Yeah, so very interested to see. Also just interested to get my taste of the 5-0. Everyone's gotten the swept hand by Vic so far, so maybe I'll get mine as well, or we'll see. I'm very excited to play him.
Yeah, we will see. His deck is very, very scary. I do think I could have taken our match, not even with the admin early on that I talked about in the last episode, but I made a really, really stupid play, honestly, where I was attaching to this Vaporeon on the bench, planning a rare candy, and then he evolved into Kabutops, and I knew it's in his deck, I can look at it. So suddenly it's now I don't have an attacker, and he has a fully loaded Kabutops active. So I think his deck is fallible. That's the point that I'm trying to get to. I think he can lose. It's not just totally broken and unbeatable. It's just no one has done it yet.
It's not one energy Vibrava like we saw last time.
It's not well, you have a really good deck, but then you can also just in a pinch one-shot anything. No, he does actually have to fight for it. It's just his deck is very capable of doing that.
Yeah, so I'm interested to see more of his deck as well. I think it's been featured once on the live stream, but it certainly looks really good. So there's a lot of most of the decks, if not all decks in the top 8 right now are in maybe the top 10 look really solid. So I'm really interested to see what ends up actually being in the bracket.
Yeah, definitely. I would say even most of the top 16 could have a place in the top 8 by the end of the event. There are some really, really strong decks that maybe hit some bad matchups or, hit some rocky draws, and now they're 3-2, maybe going to bubble out, or even 2-3, and just trying to scrape that last win to bubble into top 16. So definitely some very good decks in some unfortunate situations, and I will be very interested as well to see what actually makes the cut.
Yeah. I also, from a conversation the other day, and I wanted to bring it up here because it's really interesting. You said that the amount of games that a cube gets run under Cube League is how much compared to an actual tabletop setting?
So games overall, it's 225 to 250 for each deck. So each deck total is played twice that many times because there are 2 decks in each game. So essentially each deck that is drafted, combined all the games played from each side, is between 400 and 500, which is just absolutely absurd. So in a normal cube, there are, and this is if you have 8 players at the table and nobody drops, which is both of those things not always the most common occurrence. In that case, you have 12 games because it's all best of 1. And you have, so if you essentially 24 test runs for the decks total. And that makes Cube League this insane stress test as well, because you have the best of 3, so you can guarantee that the best deck generally is the one coming out on top, or very close matchups are decided by very small margins, and you don't have blowouts as much like that. You also, of course, have just a higher game count, and you have 6 rounds with the top 8 instead of just 3 rounds and done. So plus 32 players instead of 8. There are just so many factors that make it such a large event, and I would say it's very common for super powerful strategies to come out of that, just because it's a much broader test than Cube almost ever gets. I would say it is the most intense way to test a cube, for sure. So that's one of the reasons why we do so much testing in the lead up, because anything that we've missed will happen in the league. But overall, it's just a really unique experience and a really unique test for a cube to go through and see how it holds up. So, but yeah, 4 to 500 games, just depending on how many best of 3s or 2 games versus 3.
Yeah, I mean, it's just something you can't really emulate in real life as quickly. And as we're wrapping up this current Cube League season, I thought it'd be something for the listeners' sake, something really cool to, listen to. Something you don't commonly think about is just how many games are getting played with these cubes. So very cool. A few announcements I wanted to make before we get into our Crack-a-Pack is if you are interested in playing in more Cube tournaments and maybe ones that don't last quite as long as Cube League, I recommend the P-Cube series. It's a free tournament series that is sponsored by the podcast here, and we offer up packs. So it's a good way to compete, get packs all in one day. So they take place every Sunday at 4 p.m. Central. You can sign up on Limitless and as well in the Cube Discord. You need to sign up in both. But if you look in the Cube Discord, you can find all the information you need for it. This week, this coming Sunday, we'll be running Vents Gen 7 All-Stars Cube. Many people who are familiar with the league should be familiar with the cube. It's basically a homage to all the Gen 7 era cards. You have a lot of the familiar cards. You got like Soul Valley, you got Lycanroc, stuff like that. So list of that will be in the description. And it's just a ton of fun. We have 9 people signed up already. Would really love to break 12, get 2 pods of 6 going, if not more. If you can't play, but you want to tune in, we will be live streaming it at 4 p.m. Draft will be at 4 p.m. Games start around 6:30. So you'll be able to watch some of those. The VODs for the draft will be on our YouTube channel as well as the finals. The finals this go around was very interesting. It was kind of a few turns and then game, so not a lot to post there. But we will try to have some more gameplay out there on the YouTube channel soon. So make sure you check that out. And lastly, it's been a while, but Connor, do you want to talk about Champions Cube?
Yeah, definitely. So it's not super close, but it is coming, and we know roughly when it's coming. So it's going to be in mid to late August, the next Champions Cube, the third one, which is really exciting. I think when the first one happened, it was kind of an experiment. It was not even something that I thought people would necessarily be interested in. It was not something that I expected to be a lasting thing. For all I knew, the first one was going to be the only one, and it was going to be a great time. But to see now a third Champions Cube happening, now we have these amazing stream setups, thanks to Andrew and Davi and the whole content team, and even like really amazing viewership considering what we expected and considering what we started with. Like last Champions Cube peaked like 25 or more. So really exciting overall. And next Champions Cube, mid to late August. We should have a date in the next month or so. So definitely keep an eye out for that. It's going to be awesome. That is this time any player with 20 points or more will have an invitation. If they have 50 points or more, they'll have a round 1 bye, and 80 points or more, they'll have a 2-round bye. So that is definitely, it's benchmarks for players to continue playing in the season because there was not as much of an incentive previously. So by making it the way that we have, we've made it so that you can definitely get your 20 and coast, but we've also really incentivized the players who do play every single league and do try and do as well as they can every single league. So really excited for the format this time, just really excited for the event, and hopefully I do my best and don't bomb this time because the last 2 have not been so pretty on my end.
You know what they say, third time's a charm, right?
Yeah, well, there are some other people playing this event for the third time, so I don't know if I want to rely on that.
Just the charm work for, right?
Yeah.
So, and if you're listening to this and want to learn how to qualify, make sure to tune in the conclusion. We'll talk more about that too. But moving right along, we have our last Crack-a-Pack of Mike and JL's Mutant Cube. Kind of sad. I feel like it kind of just flew by. Yeah,
it's been very fast, or at least it's felt very fast. In actuality, it's been like, I guess, almost 2 months now that we've talked about it, just because we had Chaos Cube in there. But it's been a great cube to talk about, and definitely excited to talk about it today.
Yes, I'm interested. What pack do we got for us?
All right, so today we did some thinking, did some rolling to get to this pack, but we think this one's really cool. And we haven't actually talked about it at all, except for just saying like, yeah, I think that's a good one. So we have Empoleon with Ice Blade and Aqua Jet. We have Holin's Magnemite, Togetic with, I believe it's Holy Shield, VS Seeker, Pokemon Retriever, Unknown Q, Xerosic, Salomon Cx from Deoxys, Clamperl with Evolutionary Advantage, and Switch. So Andrew, what are your first thoughts looking at this pack?
So I mean, it's actually a really tempting pack. There's a lot of cards in here that I'm like, I would be taking a few seconds, if not longer, probably longer, to like really analyze this pack and figure out what I want to take here. 3 cards in particular that I really like are, one, the VS Seeker, just because getting supported recursion can be really nice. There's a lot of really good supporters that I would like to chain here. Your Steven's Advice, Even like your stuff like Faba can be really strong, or even like Brainy's Compassion. Just a lot of stuff you can play in this cube that really VSC takes advantage of. Pokemon Retriever in this kind of cube, especially when you're dealing with so much different Pokemon, your strategies can vary so much on what's left in your deck. Something like Retriever is great, especially early on. You check the box on getting your early recovery. So always tempted by Retriever. It's just a great card. It's basically Rescue Stretcher for anyone who's not familiar with the format. And then Salomon Cx has to be one of the most underrated EXs in the cube. I don't. So actually, I guess in the future cube sense, when they can't evolve, it's fine because it's stage 2, right? I don't know if they can't mutant evolve though, so you'll have to correct me on that one. But the Dragon Lift with giving your whole board for retreat, I guess minus EX is insane. I actually did not consider this card to be as good until I saw what your deck was doing with all of the acceleration you have with it. The mobility you get with the free retreat is so strong. Flame Jet being able to do 40 to anywhere on the board can be such pressure, as well as that Dragon Flame. So you discard 2, but you're doing 120, which is really good in this cube. There's a lot of Pokemon that fall around that 120 range. If not, maybe just a little bit higher, but you can always play around that. But the Bright Flame, and the fact that it's so big, 160 HP, very tanky Pokemon, resistant to fire and fighting, is insanely strong. So lots of great stuff with this EX. But I think for my money, I'm going to take the Retriever. I would not be upset. I mean, there's so many other good cards you can definitely take in this pack, but the Retriever for me, just causing the box, getting recovery early, for me just feels so good. So that would be my pick, but I'm really interested to hear what you think about this pack.
Yeah, so great analysis. Definitely on your VS Seeker point, I have VS Seekered for Faba a lot of times in this event, so you are not wrong at all on the assessment there. Faba and just a lot of the utility supporters in the cube are super powerful with that card. But so when I look at this pack, there are 4 cards that I would consider to be kind of reasonable picks. And maybe a 5th. Unknown Q is like barely on the edge. I do consider Unknown Q to be a very, very strong card, regardless of whether you're in Psychic or not. Just being able to get back into an ideal basic off of a Search 3 or something to that effect can be very, very good. So Unknown Q, honorable mention here, but I don't think it's quite on the level of the other 4 cards that I'm going to talk about. So the first one is the Empoleon, the one with Ice Blade and Aqua Jet. And the reason why is because single prize stage 2s and single prize attackers that are powerful are some of the most valuable things that you can have in this cube. The ability to swing the prize trade in your favor by putting something active that your opponent has to attack a couple of times to knock out, but still only get 1 prize for, can be really, really huge. And Empoleon is one of the best single prize stage 2s in the cube. Ice Blade, 40 damage anywhere for 2 energy. That's really nice. Andrew talked about the Flame Jet attack on Salomon Cx, essentially the same exact attack. I have used that attack on Salamence to extreme effect in this event, and Empoleon would be no different whatsoever, so Ice Blade cannot be underestimated. And then Aqua Jet, 3 for 70 with potential upside, is just a really nice, affordable attack. The costs segue into each other really well. You know, in the early game, it's very easy to get 2 energy onto an Empoleon, Ice Blade, and then the next turn, Aqua Jet, and really start applying some pressure. Versatility and attack costs has been something that the more I've played this cube, the more and more I've seen has been really important. I've seen a lot of decks that either have attack costs that are too low and they aren't able to get a payoff for their extra energy very well, or attack costs that are all too high and they end up not being able to respond to pressure early on or not being able to do enough in the first couple of turns. And then by the time they actually get a good attack off, they're 2, maybe even 3 prizes behind their opponent. And then it's really hard to win the game, even if your payoff is really good. So just having a really nice attack curve and strong attacks at multiple energy costs is fantastic. So Empoleon, super strong card, definitely a top contender in this pack. Next one, VS Seeker. VS Seeker, you talked about it a lot. I definitely have an affinity for this card, especially in this cube, just because a lot of the utility supporters, things like Zerosic, Mr. Brainy's Compassion, Faba, they're all so strong. Like every single deck is going to have targets for Zerosic, Faba, and being able to use that card multiple times can really put you in a dominant position, especially if you're doing something like removing, a Holin's Pokemon or a double colorless energy, something that might take your opponent 2 whole turns to reattach. It can be a huge game-breaking upset. In addition to VS Seeker just padding out your consistency really nicely, which it always does. So VS Seeker, great card. Pokemon Retriever, like you talked about, Andrew, I know you really love this card in general, and I'm a huge fan as well, but I don't think I'm quite as high on it just because Pokemon Recovery does come from multiple places, but Pokemon Retriever, or Rescue Stretcher are the two most powerful recovery cards ever printed in Pokemon, for sure. The only other contestant I would say would be like Ordinary Rod, maybe, but Pokemon Retriever and Rescue Stretcher are just absolutely insanely powerful cards, and they are some of the best recovery you can have. The option to either get a card immediately back to hand or shuffle 3 is super important, especially in Mutant, where you are almost always going to be able to make use of those Pokemon you get back immediately. There's not going to be any lag. There's no setup time. It's just Retriever action very, very often. So Retriever, insanely powerful in this. I would definitely consider it a top tier pick out of this pack. And then the fourth card, and the card that I would take out of this pack, is the Salomon Cx, like you talked about. So I actually voiced to the admin team and the cube creator leading into the event, I'm not totally sure about this card. I think it might be too good, but it does need a lot. And I'm still kind of on the fence about it. I don't necessarily think that it's too good, and maybe my evaluation of it is just a lot higher than other people, because in the actual league, I'm the only person who put this in their deck out of 32 players. But I built my entire deck to make it work. So I'm like, is it really as good as I think it is? Does it need a lot and it's worth the payoff, or it's the payoff that you need? So I'm not totally sure. But I will say, Salomon Cx is a really crazy good card. Like you talked about, the Pokebody Dragon Lift just gives your deck a ton of mobility. No matter where Salamence is on the board, it is doing something that is very impactful. Flame Jet 40 anywhere is such a tremendous advantage. Just being able to put that 40, I've set up knockouts on opponents' EXs that I expect to come into play. I have knocked out basic Pokemon that I'm afraid of. Like in my matchup against Odysseus, this attack was huge because I was able to Flame Jet a Rattata before it evolved into Clefable EX, which could one-shot my Salamence. Things like that happen all the time. Just being able to put damage where it's most effective is crazy. So Flame Jet, super strong. And again, we talk about the good attacks at multiple energies. And I think Salamence really epitomizes that, because the second attack, 4 for 120, discard 2 energy. This attack is very costly, and some decks are not going to be able to facilitate it, especially if you don't have the acceleration. But if you do have the acceleration, and if I'm first picking Salamence, I'm definitely going to end up with a deck that can make it work because it's so strong. When you do have that acceleration, 120 damage one-shots almost every single non-EX in the cube, and it is a very strong attack on an EX in the cube, and it can very easily combo with Flame Jet to take a knockout. So if your opponent has an EX on the bench, if they're setting it up, then you can Flame Jet that, you can Bright Flame it when it comes to the active, or even just being able to threaten the Bright Flame. It also one-shots a lot of the stage 1 EXs that are pretty dominant in this cube, so overall, incredibly powerful attack, and Salamence really kind of symbolizes the place where acceleration-heavy decks want to be. They want to have their cheap attacks that can get good value in the early game while they're setting up, and they want to have their big payoff attacks, and Salamence just has it all in one package. So I'm super high on that card, maybe too high, but I would take it out of this pack for sure, no question.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely with you. The Salomon Cx is one of the best stage 2s you get in colorless as well too. So it's such a nice card to have in your pool early, and interested to see if the meta evolves more with it. If in future iterations of this cube, maybe we see it evolve into more draft. Maybe we see more people playing it besides just you. I don't know. We'll have to see.
Yeah. And even in test
too.
Even in test too, I was playing this card every single time I saw it. Essentially, I think out of the 5 tests I played, I had that card in my deck 3 times. So people didn't really have a lot of opportunity to play with it, which might be one of the reasons too that I'm so much higher on it than other people. But yeah, I could definitely see your consideration that it would see more play moving forward, just because people will have more opportunities to experiment with it.
Yeah. And if you're looking at this pack and you have anything you want to comment on it, please let us know in the YouTube comments. What card would you take? Do you think maybe Salomon Cx is too good in this cube, or do you think maybe it is, underrated? So we'll have to hear your guys' thoughts. But that is going to wrap us up for this intro segment. Stay tuned. We're going to talk all about returning to IRL draft in just a minute. Hello, and welcome back to this main segment. So, hopefully we only have to make one of these episodes where, global pandemic happens, and then as people get vaccinated, we start coming back to IRL Cube. It certainly has been I guess everyone's kind of said it's a little bit of cliche, but it has been a sort of unprecedented year or so with the coronavirus, making sure we're all stuck inside. And it's really, you would think it would be hard to cube while inside, but luckily online cubing has exploded in the during the pandemic. But now that everyone's getting vaccinated, we are seeing people coming back to IRL. So, Connor, I know you actually just finished building your cube IRL. How has that been?
So I am a proxy cube veteran at this point. I've made a couple of them. The first time took much longer, especially because it was for a game that doesn't have any amazing resources like Cube Koga or Proxy Croak. With the resources that we have now, it wasn't too bad, actually. The cost was unexpectedly high, even for a proxy cube. With sleeves, with energy, even like printer paper, ink, printing costs. If you don't have the printer at home, if maybe you're going to a public library, which I do strongly recommend because they generally have the cheapest printing options that you can find outside your home. There are lots of incidental costs for building a cube, even if you're doing it on the cheap. And but it's really nice just to have a cube that you can play physically with your friends. Especially now that is on the table for a lot of people again, as people get vaccinated, as everything becomes safer and safer. So definitely a good topic to address today.
People actually a lot of our listeners who are in the Discord have not drafted Cube IRL, and I'm sure they're going to very soon. So I found this one to be very topical, something a lot of people are going through. We actually all just met and cubed recently, a few weeks ago. Had a bunch of company over from the local St. Louis area, and it was just a whole week in cubing, which sounds like a dream, and it was very nice. So a lot of the topics that we're going to cover here has been stuff that Connor and myself have just really been going through, and some of the pitfalls and some of the the rustiness that happens when you have not been cubing in person for some time. So definitely some things we want to discuss. First thing I want to go through is building your cube IRL. So whether you've been either updating your cube on maybe the Discord or through Cube Koga, or maybe you just started building your cube for the first time online and you haven't accumulated any card yet, it can be a daunting process to put together. I'm sure anyone who's built a cube can tell you that it takes a lot of work. There's a lot of different things that you have to account for. And basically, we just want to go over some of the things you just want to be aware of, and give some advice on how maybe ways to help you out building your cube for the first time, especially coming off a long stretch of pandemic. So you kind of fall into two camps. You're either building your cube from scratch, or you have an existing cube and you're updating it. It's ironic. I happen to fall on the latter, and Connor falls on the former, as someone who built a cube from scratch. But so we have a pretty balanced perspective here. Basically, everything you're going to need for a cube, and this kind of ties in some of the basics that we talked about in previous episodes. It's going to be the cards for your cube, your energies, your sleeves, and a place to store your cube. Pretty basic fundamental stuff. Not really trying to get too deep into that. But a good tip that I want to give to anyone who's building their cube for the first time is buy your sleeves first, which might sound a little bit silly and a little bit cart before the horse-ish. But the reason why I say that is because you can't really proxy sleeves. You can proxy cards. You can write on energies. You can do infinite amount of things to, supplement a card. But sleeves are a bit tougher. I guess you could maybe cut out some paper and do that. But, for 600 cards, it seems a bit tough. So I recommend buying your sleeves first. Obviously, if you know the count of your cubes, this is pretty easy. So obviously, if you're going to start from scratch, I would start in Cube Koga. But assuming you've already done all that, you know your cube list, you're just trying to accumulate the cards to make it happen physically, start with your sleeves. It's one of your biggest expense outside of the cards, but also, again, one you can't substitute. On that same note, don't forget to buy sleeves for your energy. This is something that I think we take for granted all the time, especially because we only worry about our cube list online in Cube Koga and on the Discord. So we don't have to think about energy, except for maybe energy cube. But I digress. It is really something that you have to consider, because you have to have a lot of energy to supplement a cube. So I might be a bit excessive. I have 50 energies per type, but granted, there's like an energy box that Pokemon makes that has that much energy. But you want at least 30 for each. So times that by around like 6, you're going to need at least 300 sleeves to account for the amount of energy you're going to need in addition to your cube. So that's why it's so important to buy the sleeves first, and then you have pretty much it makes it a lot easier to get everything else after. You also want to have a few extra sleeves on hand as well, because unfortunately sleeves do break, especially when you have people who are rough shufflers. Like I personally am sort of rough, not on, parts that aren't mine, but the sleeves like Ultra Pro do tend to break a lot. You can get a little bit tougher shields, like Dragon Shields, like those sleeves tend to last, but you don't want to be in a situation where you have to de-sleeve energy to re-sleeve. So I recommend, biggest tip, buy your sleeves first. Make sure you have enough for your energy. Connor, I know like you had to definitely go from the start of your cube. Did you feel like the sleeves kind of catch up with you as far as expenses?
Yeah, so I actually have a very relevant story to that. I bought 700 sleeves for a 624 card cube when I was at my local game store. And I took them home, and I realized that I had forgotten not only the energy for my cube, but also the sleeves for said energy. So the next day I had to go back, and I actually had to get a lot more energy than just the ones that I needed for the cube itself, because I needed to make a bunch of proxy backings. But so I had to go back and get about 1,000 energy and 300 more sleeves. So that was an interesting experience, and it's definitely one that I would advise people to avoid if you can. Assume that you're going to need a lot. Assume you're going to need a lot of energy. Assume you're going to need a lot of sleeves. You never want to end up in a situation where you and your friends are having a great time. You are drafting, you're playing, somebody breaks a sleeve, you don't have one on hand to replace it. Now somebody is either going to have a really janky shuffle experience, cards might get damaged, all kinds of stuff can happen at that point, and it's so easy to avoid just by having extras. So get plenty of extras, keep them on hand. You never know if you might need to, sleeve up more energy for a certain type. It's 30 is generally a safe count, but I have seen cases where people's needs have exceeded that. Just over the previous weekend that happened. So it definitely is something that occurs and something that you should be prepared for. So, and I agree with Andrew, starting with your sleeves, and I would add energy to that as well. Start with your foundation. Don't do a bunch of stuff before you have the things you need to assemble your cube. And that's not talking about don't build your cube before you have sleeves. Like, don't put it together on Cube Koga. It's not exactly what we're talking about. Just more, if you have your sleeves on hand, if you have your energies on hand, it's going to be way easier to be efficient with your time. With sleeving, it's going to be a lot easier to stay organized. You're not going to be having to move a whole bunch of cards around over and over. So do yourself a favor, take care of the foundation first, and it will definitely help. And I definitely agree, 300 over your cube count is a good place to be. You can, I would say, get away with like 250 or so if you spend about 180 to 200 on energy. Maybe you spend up to 240 on energy, actually, because if you have 8 types in a cube, 30 energy of each type, that'd be 240. So really, 300 does seem like the best place to be. So 300 more sleeves in your cube count, at least, would be a good place to be.
Yeah, and as I say, that's one of the things is like when we've been usually been cubing online, it's so easy to take for granted, just like the little details like that end up being a big deal, because oftentimes when we're worrying about cube drafts, we're not really thinking about, you're not thinking about sleeves, right? When you're drafting online, there's no sleeves, there's no cards to shuffle and protect. So you completely forget about that. You don't really think about energy because, you just add energy to your deck, right? Online, you don't actually think about grabbing the energy out of the box. But I've been in situations before too where it's like, I don't have enough energy to give people for the draft. You never think that 2 people are going to need like 15 fire energies, but when it comes up, it's, uncomfortable to say the least. So you want to make sure you have more than enough than what you need. I tend to stay around 50, but like 30 is definitely acceptable and should last you. So sleeves, energy, some great foundation there. The next part of that is getting the cards you need for your cube. So there's a bunch of different ways to go about this. The number one point I want to mention is that there is no shame in proxying first and buying later. So proxying means just making a print copy of the cards and just cutting them out, sleeving them behind an energy or a bulk card, and calling it a day. It's a really effective method. Connor talked about it before. I'm sure he'll talk about it after I'm done talking. That proxying really does save you. One, it can save you a lot of money, and two, I honestly think it's a good investment in just trying. If you're prototyping a cube, or if you're trying to deal with the hassle of dealing with card prices right now being as high as they've ever been. The one thing I do see that is kind of bums me out when I see it is when cube builders take good cards, like great cards in their cube, but they put in mediocre cards because they can't afford to buy the real one. It's like, that is such a shame, because it's better to have a cube that is great with proxies than one that is less fun because the cards aren't as good or the cube isn't as balanced because of it. And oftentimes it's because of the feel of the real card, which I can sympathize. It does change the feel, I guess, if you have the real card in front of you, but ultimately at the end of the day, it's the experience behind the cube. So I recommend, if you can't afford to shell out a ton of money, like even if you have like a low to mid power cube, you're spending like a high fortune just trying to get some of these really catch cards like Luxray GL, or even if you're playing like we saw RSPK cube, you have to think how much that would cost, trying to get all of the transceivers, trying to get all the really old EX cards. Like, it's possible, but man, if you are in a situation where you can buy those cards, like, that's great. But if that's the reason why you can't build your cube, I would just look at proxying. You have printing services like your local library. You have stuff like Staples or Office Max also has printing services as well. You could even, if you don't have a printer, you can maybe ask a relative. You're like, hey, I'll buy your ink and paper supply if I can just use your cube or use your printer for a little bit to print these proxies. It ends up being way cheaper than buying the cards. For my personal situation, when I first built my cube, I did not have all my cards built out yet. I had a good deal of cards built out. But I had proxies of my stuff like my Legend Maker Lapras, my Jirachis, some really old cards I couldn't find. But, as a competitive player, I traveled to regionals and stuff. There's lots of vendors. If I see a card I needed for my cube, I would buy it and just sort of build from there. And that honestly is a ton of fun for me. It's kind of like a little treasure hunt. You're out here looking for cards. So, and it's kind of cool to see your cube start to come together. But I think so often players start with the fact that I need to build my cube by having all of the real cards up front. And it looks really daunting, and the price tag, I think, can deter people away. And as a lot of people have started to build more low to mid power cubes in the Discord. And if you're one of those people out there who is like really thinking about building an IRL, I would recommend looking at proxies, just because it's such an affordable method. It's so much faster in terms of you don't have to worry about shipping. You don't have to worry about, you have to put in the legwork of cutting them out and dealing with all of that. But you end up saving time and money using that method. So, Connor, you dubbed yourself the proxy king at this point. You want to care to elaborate?
I don't know if I would go that far, but I am definitely familiar with the struggles and the effort involved in building a proxy cube. And I would actually go so far as to say, if you need to spend more than $50 or $60 on cards to finish a cube that you have not played, whether that be online or just any other way, then you should just proxy the cards that you're missing instead, because you don't know if those cards are going to stay in your cube. You don't know exactly how good they'll be, exactly how necessary they'll be. Nothing feels worse than spending $50 on a card and then taking it out after the first run. Like that is just a terrible experience for you. It's not fun. It's not a good financial situation to be in, just because, you've essentially spent $50 on something that you either have to sell, have to hope that you can fit back into your cube in the future, or you're just out $50. And none of those are ideal circumstances. You'd much rather, if you're going to spend more money on cards for your cube, then you definitely want them to be cards that you're going to be able to play and stay in there and that you're going to be able to enjoy. So the reason why I say $50 or $60 is because that's about the amount it takes to print an entire cube. And that's in color. So $50, $60 for an entire cube. It's really affordable compared to buying the cards in a lot of cases, for sure. So especially if your cube is untested, definitely save yourself the financial burden of buying cards and then having to take them out. Proxy it first. Then once you're sure you know what cards you want in there, at least within a reasonable margin, that's when you make the purchase, get the real cards in there. And of course, that doesn't count for if you're building a cube out of cards you already have. Obviously you don't have any financial investment at that point, or if you need to buy like $30 worth of trainers to round out your cube. So circumstances like that are totally fine. Go ahead and buy your cards and round out your stuff, and it'll be great. But if you have any big ticket cards, or if you have a high volume of cards, then before you make that jump, try it out first. Proxy it. Big advocate of proxy cubes. But I will say, big important note: print your proxies in color for cube. The reason why I say that is not only for accessibility reasons. I actually play cube with a colorblind friend, and he can't read black and white cards, so that can make it very hard for people. Either friends that you have, you may not know they're colorblind, or may not think about it, or if you play, as your play group expands, if you have colorblind players come in, then they may not be able to read your proxies. But it's also just a much more immersive experience to have really nice looking proxies, or at least proxies that look as nice as you can. You don't have to go crazy, but just proxies printed in color. Yes, it's going to be a little bit more expensive, but it's not going to be expensive. And it really will be worth it. It'll make the experience of drafting your cube so much nicer. The snap recognition is going to be so much better. And a lot of the time, the cards are not going to be recognizable immediately to people, because they're cards that are either long out of print, that are old, that didn't see a lot of play because, the format wasn't right for them, but your cube format is right for them. So helping to build that snap recognition to increase the speed at which players are able to draft, and really just to make it feel more like a regular card and make that experience more enjoyable. Definitely print your proxies in color.
Yeah, definitely good points there. And one thing I want to add as well is, in general, I like to say that like price should dictate like the cards in your cube. And that works two ways. So one, and it's just a situation that some players can find themselves in, is like, let's just say you spend $20 on a card, and it ends up not being as good in your queue as you were hoping it was going to be. And then you kind of get into the situation where you don't want to cut it because you spent the money on it. So it just ends up being just like this, not that great card in your cube, and your cube suffers for it. That's kind of it's a bad situation to be in, right? Because in your cube ultimately it's just suffering because, I sympathize. It is tough to like cut cards that you spent a lot of money on. And that's another advocate for proxying first, buying later. And that's something you don't really have to deal with online. So when you're switching out cards in Cube Koga, there's no real tangible object you're switching out. I swapped out like a very, let's say I swapped out like Flareon Star from my cube for something else. Like I'm not, cringing at the fact that I cut like a $300 card or something out of my cube. It's just a card. It's just it's one card for another. But if you actually bought something like a Flareon Star, which is an expensive card, and one I probably won't buy for my cube personally, but let's just say I did. I mean, you can imagine the toughness it would feel to cut something like that. Now, that's kind of a minute card in comparison. Like, let's just say it was more like in the line. Maybe it was like a powerful level X, or maybe it was a weak level X. You just don't want to be bound by those cards. And the flip side, and something I've talked about earlier, is that if a card is really good in your cube, but you can't afford to buy the real version, let's just say Rayquaza Star, for example, works really well in your cube, but it's like thousands of dollars, and that's unreasonable. I mean, it's not reasonable just if anyone can really go out and buy Rayquaza Star just for cube. Then you just don't put it in there, but then like the decks that could utilize it, are completely different now. That's the reason where I think proxying again makes a big difference, because even if you have to put in like, even if it's not like the real card, players still get to play with it like it was the real card. So oftentimes I think it's just worth having the proxy, even if like your cube was 99.99% real, but you had the one proxy that was like that one card. The experience, I think, trumps like the realness of the cube. So I am also a huge advocate for proxying, and definitely proxying before you buy cards, because it gets you out of a lot of trouble. So then next, I want to move into the other side of players who have probably been in the pandemic, and that's the people who already have had cubes but have maybe seen significant updates to their cube as time has gone on. I know for me, my cube looks very different today than it did a year ago, and I haven't touched my cube a year ago since about a year since the pandemic. This lockdown hit, so my cube has been very much in shambles over the course of the past few weeks trying to update it, and I did want to highlight some ways to make it an easier process, because updating your cube can be tough, and it can be very monotonous. It can be very chaotic because I mean you're dealing you want, there's so many things you gotta keep track of. You gotta make sure you still have your right number of cards at the end of the day, that you didn't lose any cards, and that sort of thing, and keeping track of, okay, these cards getting cut, do these cards stay in? It can be very easy to fall into this like chaotic nature in that it can have. So my number one advice is stay organized. Avoid letting your living space or your office or what have you, maybe your bedroom, become like consumed by this cube, unless you plan on just doing it all in one sitting. So sometimes that's just how it goes. Like you're sorting, you have your stack of cards you're sorting in, and you have to make room for all the cube. It can just easily eat up maybe your kitchen counter. But you get it done, and then you pack it up and call it a day. But if you think it's going to take you longer than just maybe like 4 or 5 hours to do, or you don't have enough time to do it all in one day, it feels worse just to have it all sit there, and then it can get moved around, and that doesn't feel good. So you gotta be really careful. Cube takes a lot of organization, and keeping all of your cards straight can be really tough if you don't stay on top of it. So I have a few tips to help you out. So one thing I like to do is sort your cube before you update it. So my old cube, I have it sorted by my types. So I have my fire stage 2, my fire stage 1, my grass stage 2, grass stage 1, all the way down to the end. And then I have my supporters, trainers, stadiums, special energies, all sorted as well. You can sort it however you want, but just in a way so you can like pretty much go down the line and update it. And then at that point, I like to just, I like to actually divide the cube. So I like to divide it by cards that are staying in the cube and cards that are going out. So in my situation, I had a lot of lines leave, but I had a lot of trainer cards that were staying. So pretty much had a good solid stack. Not all my lines were changing, but let's just say 80% of my lines were cut. So those would be in one pile, cut pile, and the cards that are staying one in the other. Same thing with the trainers. So really, that's just so you don't have to mess with those cards, because the cards that are staying in the cube, you can just forget about. And that kind of leads me into my really the reason why I do this is for my my pro tip here, and that is actually, since we have Cube Koga now, it's something I wish I would have had years ago, but my updating cubes easier, is if you're making a huge update to your cube, I actually recommend making a copy of your cube, leaving the copy on private, and going through your current list and deleting cards that are staying in your that are staying in the new cube. So that way you have basically a list of cards that need to go in. And what that does, it gives you such a quick and accessible way to see, okay, what cards do I need for my cube before you even start proxying it. Cube Cookie even has a proxy feature, so that even saves you a step of having to figure out how to get all the cards from like proxy code. So I would copy the cube you want to your updated cube, I should say, your updated cube, and just delete the cards that are already in your old cube that you don't have to worry about, and then you just use that list to update your cube accordingly. And you can check it, and as you add in, those cards that you're finding in your proxying, you can cross them out too until it's all deleted. It just saves you a ton of effort, and it can be really tough to remember what cards you were and weren't putting in, especially if you're making like bulk orders. I know for me, I like to make a lot of my orders on TCG Player and like Troll and Toad. So like I like to buy like the lines themselves because they aren't that expensive. So, but I would miss lines all the time. I would forget that, like, oh yeah, I need this Boulder line. Oh yeah, I need this Lucario line. But nothing feels worse than remembering that than the time after you ordered it. So something I would just recommend is just have that list handy whenever you're looking for cards. It also can work if you're going to like big events later, maybe months down the line, and you don't know if you need a certain card for your cube. This can just be your proxy cube. Okay, what's proxied in here? Okay, well I have a Gliscor level X in here. Okay, well that's on this sheet, so it means proxy my cube, and then you buy it and you can just delete it off the list. So I think it saves you a ton of time. I would recommend leaving it on private though, just because you don't really want it to be a public list that gets thrown into like our pack one pick one bot, or that people are gonna be really confused by. So, but that's really my advice for updating your cube. Just stay organized, stay on top of it. I would definitely utilize Cube Koga in that way for proxies, or for just having a quick list of what cards you need. Connor, do you have anything you want to add as far as updating your cube goes?
Yeah, just one thing. Overall, I think you covered it really well, but the one thing that I wanted to add is don't hesitate to update your cube to include cards that you don't know. It is going to be a much better experience for your players if you remove cards that are way overperforming, way underperforming, and make your cube a more balanced experience. And then maybe you have to bring in some proxies. It's going to be so much more fun than if you just have the same set of broken cards run after run after run. People are going to get tired of it. It's going to get old. And once you start to lose your play group for cube, it can be very difficult to get it back. So it's really important to, if you do see problems in your cube in real life, make those changes even if you don't own the cards or if you're attached to the cards that are the problems, because making a fun experience is number one. And, it's very easy to get attached to certain cards. It's very easy to have, pet cards or favorite cards or cards you spent a lot of money on, things like that, that would make you resist removing them from your cube. But it really is for the best if you just try and make your cube as much fun as possible and try and distance yourself from the kind of thinking that would prevent those important changes from happening. So that's just a big one that I've seen overpowered cards stay in cubes for way too long, and they just make it so it's not fun to play, and that's not a good situation for the cube owner who wants to play their own cube. That's why they built it. And it's not a good situation for the play group too, because they probably got in a cube, they really enjoyed it, and then over time their experience is kind of soured because they're playing with cards that they don't enjoy and cards that are either underpowered or overpowered or just not right for the cube. So that's a big one that I wanted to address as well.
Yeah, I mean that's spot on. And I think it's like if you're like a starting cube owner that's been cubing online, but now you're coming to the IRL space, and you just want to get really comfortable with proxies. I do think it's just the fastest way to switch cards in and out, and it's also the most cost effective. So there's plenty of ways to make proxies. PKM cards has a great proxy function, as well as if you're Cube Koga also has just like great proxy functionality built in. So it was super affordable. Just don't be afraid to make the switches that you need to make your cube as fun and as balanced as it should be, just like you would do online. Because it's so easy to switch out cards online, in that if you can adapt the same type of mindset to in person, then you'll notice your average cube session will be still as much fun as it would be as playing online, if not more, adding that physical aspect to it. So definitely spot on. The next thing I want to get to is the next part of cubing that is definitely very different when you add the in-person part to it, and that is the drafting. We're very fortunate to have a way to draft cubes right now using Google Sheets, and so many things I just take for granted, as far as like it all just being automated and it all just being right in your face, and so visual. But you don't get that as much when you're cubing in person. In fact, you get you get the other side. You get the tactile feeling. You get the experience of seeing the cards for yourself, which has a give and take. The first thing I want to say with drafting, and that it's more with a setup. I know, like when Connor and I were drafting, I think it was his cube was one of the first ones I think I've drafted in a long time in person, and it's the shuffling you aren't prepared for. You do have to do a lot of shuffling. I'm not talking about like your own deck when you're playing, but the cube itself. And this is still related to, I guess, to our cube owners on there, because you guys should be really responsible for making sure your cube is gets to that point of obviously enlist the people cubing to help, but you need your cube to be shuffled. If it's sorted, if it's if maybe the old decks that people played are on top of each other, they're not randomized at all, and you'd be surprised how many shuffles it takes to actually randomize a cube. So be prepared to shuffle a lot. And basically, you have to make sure the lines are all shuffled thoroughly so that the lines themselves don't get clumped, because that's always feels bad. You open a pack that has like 3 Ampharos in it. Like, how sad are you if you were already on that line? Like, maybe you got like the jamming at one point. Then usually 3 of your Ampharos in one pack. You're like, oh well, I guess I'm getting one of those. It just doesn't feel good for to have. You want to avoid that. So, and also one thing I commonly see with this too is that like players tend to like just shuffle one clump of the cube with another clump of the cube and just shuffle that a lot, like you would a deck, right? Like I'm shuffling these 60 cards together, but think about what's that really doing, right? That randomized pack of 60 is like, okay, that might be part of one pack, but you still have the rest of the cube to shuffle. So what I recommend is taking your cube and basically making stacks of it lined up across the table, like maybe like 10 different stacks of your cube, and then just taking clumps of the top to make their stacks and then shuffling those. So you can take a clump of the stack, shuffle that, put that aside, take another stack, shuffle it around. It really helps randomize, get all the cards basically mingled together. Basically, you just want to ensure that, like, you know, different coasts of the cube are touching each other, shuffling, mixing them up, do it again. You don't want to spend too long shuffling just like one set of cards. It sounds like I'm being a little bit pragmatic, or not pedantic here. But again, we don't have the computer on our side here to really help randomize the cube, so we have to go in and do it, and it can take a lot of work. The other thing you want to also be prepared for is just get ready for human error. This happens more often than you think, and you're probably going to be reminded of it when you start cubing again in person. And that's just like making sure everything is right. Everyone's got their pack counts right. We get to so many points in the cube when you start a cube and everyone's shuffled up. We have all the packs stacked together, and then someone's like, I only have 14 cards in my pack. I need 15. So then everyone has to count their packs, and then one person has 16. So don't be that guy or girl, I should say. Just make sure you are constantly double checking, not triple checking, the pack counts that you're making sure everything just lines up, the math works out. Also, and I don't know, I haven't had the experience of drafting with that many other people yet, so I don't know how confident this is. I feel like it probably is pretty common, but just to reiterate, always cut your last pack before you get to it. So if there are 5 packs and I'm on pack 4, cut the 5th one. And that's because it looks pretty much the same as a past pack, so you don't want to have someone take it by accident. And it just, it ruins it doesn't ruin the draft, but it makes the draft a lot more complicated when an extra pack works its way into the draft pool. So if there's let's just say even 6 packs, make sure and you get to pack 5, cut pack 6 in half. Let's just put half of it, turn it sideways. Makes it a lot easier for everyone to know, okay, that's not a pack I need to be drafting. It's just, again, relates to human error. This is just things we don't have to deal with when we're drafting online. It's just, you don't think about it until it happens. And I know a lot of people out here are going to be returning to Cube IRL very soon. So, I mean, this kind of thing can catch you by surprise. So this is like, don't make the same mistakes we've made. And hopefully this is, as far as drafting concerns, pretty helpful. That's just kind of like the setup part of it before we get into the actual drafting skills itself that IRL brings. Con, do you have anything to add about as far as like, the human error, as far as setting up the cube or shuffling and whatnot?
Man, the first time we got back together and played a cube in person, the very first time, reminded me of all of the negative things that are associated with cubing in person versus online. It took like 20 minutes to set up and deal all the packs, and then we dealt the packs and like there was one card off and we were all scrambling looking through our packs to figure out where it was, and it was like, oh man. So don't let that put you off. If you're a player, if you're a cube builder, it happens all the time. It's just a necessary evil of dealing with such a huge quantity of cards with such specific numbers. And I do want to very, very strongly reiterate Andrew's point of, and when he says cutting your last pack, so take the top half of your last pack and turn it 90 degrees and then set it on top. So it's like a plus. And the reason why that is so important is, one, Andrew says, yeah, I don't know how often this happens. This happens a lot. Like, if people don't cut their last pack, I have been in so many drafts where people are drafting, it's totally normal. We're like 7 picks in. Somebody goes, my last pack is gone. Oh my gosh, it is such a frustrating experience to know that either the draft is not going to have turned out right because somebody made a mistake, or you're going to have to rewind a whole bunch of picks. You're going to have gained all this knowledge. The draft is broken in some way at that point, and it can be fixed, but it's never going to be the same that it would have been before. But the reason why this one frustrates me so much is because it is an entirely avoidable error. People, miscounting packs, it's going to happen. It's not uncommon. Everybody has done it, and it just happens, and you pass a card and it's no big deal. It is so easy to avoid drafting that last pack by taking that one very simple step of cutting it. I saw some people set their phone on it. Anything that you remember to do every single time, do it. Because it will save you so much headache. And if that has never happened to you in your play group, or if you haven't played in real life and you've never been in a situation where that happens and this is totally new to you, be very prepared for it and definitely do everything that you can to avoid it, because it is so avoidable, so frustrating, and just not fun at all. So I know I've said the same thing a couple of times, but I cannot say it enough. Avoid this error, and make sure your last pack is distinct from the other packs going around the table.
Yeah, nothing feels worse than just like you spend all this time and effort, like we said, like 20 minutes to shuffling like your cube just to set it up, and then like the whole thing kind of just be ruined by one simple error that can be avoided by just rotating half the pack 90 degrees. You know, like if you take one thing away from this episode, just cut your last pack. Just do it.
Cut your last pack.
So I guess now we're gonna need. So a lot of this has been more of like, I guess, the cube builder's perspective, but this is like now I guess the player more often than not will experience it. It's the actual drafting itself, and I'm really excited to, well, one, like, you know, pull the people who haven't queued before IRL, who experienced this for the first time. I'm really curious with how they experience this. For me personally, I mean, I've been queuing since late 2017, so I've been queuing IRL for much longer than I have been queuing online, but I've gotten so used to the benefits of queuing online and what that experience is like. Which, you know, keeping online took its own adjustment. So I feel like now I'm working my way back to, okay, this is what drafting in person feels like. And it feels different. It definitely does feel different to have to I say manually. I mean, you have to manually look at cards either way, but like having to like sort, like not have the whole pack spread out in front of you, and having to, like, you know, open, like look at the pack and have to go through each card. I don't know what it is about being in person versus online, but, you know, remembering every card in online pack, well, not every card, but like, you know, the highlight cards is significantly easier because maybe it's just the rate you see the pack, or maybe it's just the fact that you can screenshot packs. You know, there's a lot of easy ways you can remember what was in packs before, but you're drafting IRL, and this might just be personally, but it's just, you don't have the same feeling that you do and you're looking at the cards one by one. It's definitely, you want to make a point to remember at least what was in the pack. So always having to kind of take your time. Obviously I wouldn't just like spend 5 minutes looking at each card and then like trying to just like absorb the pack. Like, it's not that important, but you do want to take your time a little bit more, maybe when you're starting out drafting in person, to like really analyze the pack, because you can easily miss things. It's definitely like if a card was like, maybe like you weren't looking as closely and maybe you missed Steven's advice just like worked its way in there, that could change your opinion on the pack completely. So those are always silly mistakes to make. They're harder to make when you're drafting online, just because it's a lot clearer to see all of the cards on your screen. But when you're drafting in person, and it can be a little tough. Connor, I don't know if you experienced any of this, or the fact that you're opening up packs now and it's not all right in front of you, how that changes anything.
Yeah, drafting in person is hard, like compared to drafting online. Online has such a nice interface. If you don't know what's in the cube, you can just like tab over and see, okay, you know, these are the cards in the cube. You can, you know, see the pack and the pick count right on the side. Real life, you don't have any of those things. And that definitely does influence your ability to draft well. And for me, the first thing, so my first draft back in person, I was a few picks in, and I realized how much my skills online had gotten better and advanced, and how much improvement I was going to need to do in person to get to that same place. Because it really does feel so different. Your brain processes these things different when they're in your hands, when they're, you know, not super clearly laid out on your screen in front of you, than it does when you do have those references. So the best thing that you can do if you're trying to get better at cube in person is be very deliberate. You know, think about the pack, make sure you have the grasp on it that you would have had on the pack online. And it's going to take time, for sure. But drafting in person is generally faster anyway, so it's not a huge deal. It's not going to be a huge time commitment. Just really make sure you study the pack, think about it, you know, maybe like number it in your head. That can be a really big helpful thing. I started doing that toward the end of, or, you know, a couple drafts in, was just like numbering packs in my head and saying, okay, this pack is going to have 6 fewer cards, it's going to have 8 fewer cards when it comes back. These are the cards that I'm going to be looking for, and like these are some of the cards that I'm going to look for to identify and make sure that I remember that this pack is the one that it is. So it's not as easy as it is online, and that's definitely a skill you have to develop as well. So think about that and just be very deliberate. And if you can build those skills in person, then that will make your drafting that much better.
Yeah, I mean, it makes you like respect the. It's not as much drafting in Pokemon, but like the Magic players who have to like draft really well in like the IRL space. Like I don't know, like the skills that it takes to do well in IRL drafting are. I'm definitely appreciating more now that it's coming back.
Yeah, absolutely. Being able to track a card all the way around the table online, I don't find it too difficult. But in person, man, 4 or 5 packs after, I'm like, wow, how many packs ago was that? Like, just the level of tactile input, the level of visual input, level of sensory input. A lot of the time you're talking around the table with your friends, that kind of thing. There are a lot of things that are kind of bombarding your ability to recall what you've seen and where it's at, and all those things are very difficult in person.
Yeah, I think the other thing too, like when you're drafting online, it's a skill we've all probably been working on while we've been drafting, or sorry, something that happens in person that we've been working on while we've been drafting online, is like the paying attention to like the just signals around the table too, like when you see like a Blaziken EX get taken early, like that like people are on that line. But in the same vein, it's like we've been talking about, like if you can't remember if like a line topper was in a certain pack that you've seen, like that can be that's where it gets tricky. You have to really pay attention to your line toppers and what you've seen, and it can be harder because you don't see them. It's harder to remember what was in the pack, right? So picking up on signals is definitely like almost like a different. I feel like I'm flexing a different muscle in person, because it's like I have to remember that, oh yeah, this important line topper was in that pack that I've seen like four times around. So that's not gone. Okay, that's a good signal. So keeping track of stuff like that can be kind of hard, as well as like keeping track of your own draft pool. I think that's one of the biggest things for me, is that like with the Cube Drafter, that like my entire Cube draft pool is in front of me at all times, and I can sort it. So I know exactly what trainer cards and what Pokemon I have. I know that I have my line filled out. Do I have enough supporters? Do I have enough recovery? Like, I don't have to ask those questions too much when I'm drafting like online, but in person, I have to really keep up with it. And it gets really tough, especially if you're drafting like a big cube, and say like it's a 720 person, a 720 card with like 6 people, and you have like a ridiculous amount of cards. Like keeping track of that many, even just like smaller amounts too, I guess, can get really tough. I find it's good. Something I need to start getting the habit more of is just like separating my draft into like maybe piles, for like my cards that are probably going to my deck and cards that are like probably on the back burner. Just so I know, like, okay, that says the lines I need and the supporters. But Connor, do you have any good tips of just like keeping track of your draft pool in person?
Sorting your draft pool is the best thing you can do for yourself. Sort it by trainers, by items, stadiums. I also like to separate my draft pool into 2 piles. You have to be a little bit careful about this so that nothing gets drafted, but you separate it into a pile of cards that you're certain that you're not going to play and cards that you might play. And you can't even separate into 3 stacks. You can separate into cards that you won't, cards you will, and cards you're on the fence about. That really helps me organize my thoughts, because it's really easy for me to say, go to I know I'm playing this card stack and see, okay, I've got 6 draw supporters and it's pack 4. I really need to start picking more of these up. Whereas if you're just looking through your entire stack, it can be so easy. You go through your whole stack, you see 6 draw supporters in 80 cards. You're like, or maybe 60 cards. You're like, oh, I saw some supporters in there. I'm probably okay. But in actuality, you're not. You need more. So sorting your cards is a huge thing, and counting as well. So things like supporters, things like basics, evolutions, really just everything. Everything that is important to your strategy, counting the number that you have is going to be really helpful, in addition to sorting it. So even if you just have a general idea, like you don't have to know, my draw supporter pool is currently N, Juniper, Hop, whatever. You don't need to know all that. Just thinking, I have 9 draw supporters right now. and you have your stack of supporters, and if you need to, you can pick it up and you know exactly where theirs are. That makes your life so much easier, and it helps you keep your thoughts organized, and that's going to allow you to make better picks in the draft. So that's my biggest recommendation for keeping things organized and clean.
Yeah, I think that's definitely one of the skills I want to start working on when I keep IRL. It's just organizing my draft pool while I go, because I think that's not, like you said. You look at your draft stack, and like you have like 60 cards, and you do see just like a few supporters. Like maybe you drafted a Colors early, and then you got like a Stevens later, and you're like, oh yeah, my supporters are great. Then you end the draft with like 6 of them, and then that's just not enough. You need like 15, like at least like search support cards to actually like, function with your deck. So yeah, I've been in situations like that where it's like, oh, I thought I was fine, I had these. Or like the one thing I've had situations before, thankfully not recently, but I definitely have been in the spot before. It's like I thought I've drafted enough basics or enough stage 1s to fill out my line, and then I haven't. So like I'll see like 3 of like, I'll see like 3 Piplups in my draft pool, and be like, oh, okay, I probably have the line, like I'm pretty fine, I can start like passing. Or like maybe you thought you saw 4, but then you get to the end of it and you're like, wow, I just don't have enough basics for my line. It super feels bad. So having like the draft stack organized already, and you can just know those decisions without having to really go through all of the stack itself. And the last thing I think about too, it probably saves you a ton of time, because you're not having to like, okay, I need to find how many supporters I have, so let me look through all these cards. Okay, now I gotta see how many basics I have. Let me look through all these cards again. Like having to go through all of the cards over and over again can probably just be super tedious. So there's a lot of reasons to organize your stack, like you said.
Yeah, definitely. I will definitely say as well that organizing your cards and organizing your thoughts is one of the first steps that you can take to dramatically improving drafting in person and online as well. But online, it's so much easier to do that, whereas in person, you actually have to go through the motions of doing it yourself.
Yeah. So then the last part, or I guess second to last part about this is the actual playing itself. And it's not so much about, well, I guess there's a few things. So one thing I don't actually have on the show notes that I want to bring up first is that if you're coming straight from the Cube League and from the Cube event into an IRL setting, is that and this kind of goes for just really Pokemon players in general, because we're all coming from this open deck list tournament style to closed deck lists coming here soon once events open back up. Is that you have to be ready for closed deck lists, even in like these best of 1 settings that you might be doing with your casual crew. Closed deck list playing is a lot different than open deck list playing, and the fact that you have to account for so much more stuff that can happen to you. When you're playing in a closed deck list event, you don't know how many of any given resource your opponent has. Now there's a lot of skills you transfer over. Obviously, like you do make good in-game decisions. You do have to play to your outs as best as you can, but you also have to make sure you don't play yourself out of a game because of a certain card. Like, let's just say that your opponent has a copy of Lysander in their deck, or that it's probable that someone could have Guts, like Counter Catcher or something. If you play yourself to an out where it's like, well, I benched a Shaman EX, so and they have 2 prizes left, so if they have Counter Catcher, maybe they can win the game. You have to really evaluate risks like that. Whereas like in a Cube League setting, you could look at their deck list and say, okay, I know you only have 1 Counter Catcher, or I know you don't have any Gust in your deck, so it's something that you don't really have to account for as much. But in IRL closed deck list situations, you absolutely have to account for what are the various outs my opponent has. What things can I leverage? Like, do I know how many energies do I think they have, or how many energies have I seen? Connor, do you have any other like tips or stuff about playing in a closed deck list environment?
Yeah. Well, so in a closed deck list environment, I think you pretty much hit all the notes, except techs can be really valuable. So in the same sense that you have to play around more stuff, your opponent has to play around more stuff too. And the more elements that you can introduce to the game that they are not prepared for, or that will be good against them in certain situations, things like that. They will be less likely to be prepared for that because they don't know if it's in your deck. So that kind of thing can be really good. Don't dilute the function of your deck in doing so, but card like Kukui, which you pretty much always play Kukui, but even like a Buck's Training can be insanely powerful in closed deck lists, just because your opponent doesn't think that you have a way to extend your range by 10 damage. Then you take a critical knockout, you could win the game off of that. Whereas in Cube League, it's way easier to play around something like that because it's right there on paper. So that's one big thing, is that in the same vein that you have to account for more stuff in your opponent's deck, your opponent has to account for more stuff in your deck, and the number of times you can break their expectations, the higher number of times you can do that, the more likely you are to end up ahead.
Yeah, so that's something to account for. Something else, and I'm really interested to hear your thoughts on it, Cara, because I know you've talked about this before, and that is just like the issues with best of one Swiss. So for me personally, I mean, it's the kind of way I'm used to playing Cube, and it's something I want to take a little bit more look at, especially as like I'm playing Cube more and see if there's any other ways to improve upon it. But I've noticed that best of one just hits differently than the Cube League games, or like maybe the best of three, that a little bit more skill intensive. And the only issues I have with the best of one is they can feel a little bit high rolly, and it can lead to sometimes suboptimal Cube results where like maybe some like more like luck defying strategies or just luck defying games, like opponent hits a really crazy combo opposite of cards, and just ends up winning the game, can really skew some of the cube results. And that's not saying like best of one is not useful or good. It is fine, but I'm wondering like what are your thoughts on like best of one commonly with using cube?
Okay, so you are almost certainly expecting me to say exactly what I'm about to say, but I hate best of one so much. I cannot stand it. Nothing ruins my fun in a cube more than like flipping a couple of tails or hitting like a weird draw in one game, like first round, and then your whole cube's over. Like you can't win the cube. People are going to be dropping at your record. You might not even get to play more games. Like that is just miserable to me. Like that sucks the fun out of cube. And I understand that best of one has one extreme advantage, and that is time. And there is no other format that is going to be as effective as 3-round best of one as far as keeping the time commitment manageable. There's just not. So for that reason, you're probably going to play best of one 3-round Swiss more often in your cubes, in cubes that you run and cubes that other people run, than any other format. And that is okay. But I will strongly encourage people to investigate other ways to play, to, set aside more time for a cube so that you can have a better experience. Because, so this is my perspective, and I know that this is not a perspective that's shared by a ton of people, but this is at least where I'm coming from with it. I would much rather spend 4 or 5 hours playing in a cube that I felt was more skillful and more enjoyable than spend 3 hours playing in a cube where I felt like a match or even multiple matches were completely determined by factors outside of the control of players, like coin flips or crazy top decks or just really bad games. And other formats tend to be more forgiving to that. And tend to be more skillful. I feel like best of one is the least skillful way to play really any card game, but Pokemon definitely. And best of one is actually the reason why a lot of cubes nowadays will have gentleman's mulligan rules, just because they're trying to reduce the number of bad games that happen. And now cubes have even expanded to do that in best of 3, which I enjoy as well. But in best of 1, it really feels a lot more necessary. So these are just things that, especially if you're used to playing in like Cube League, or maybe you've never played in Cube in any other format besides best of 1. These are just things to think about. Read your players. If everyone's having a great time with best of 1, then like keep best of 1. Do what people enjoy. But I know, at least from my perspective, like I get very sour very fast when very unfortunate things happen and I essentially lose 3 hours worth of effort because something outside of my and my opponent's control happens. So that's rant possibly over. We may talk about it more later in the episode, but for now, rant over.
You know what? I definitely do agree. The best of one, as far as like, for me personally, I do enjoy sitting down and having a very skillful experience and like really like, honing my cube skills and seeing like, putting the things I've been working on improving to the test. So definitely like losing to like a laser flip or like, just like, oh, I couldn't wake up for 2 turns. Like that happens a lot. And, that's the best part of best of three, is that like, you have those games, but then at the end of the day, more often than not, you'll have a very skillful set, or you'll have, more even set than you would best of one. So I know for me personally, I don't know the right answer yet, like whether like what is the best way to run a cube like game wise, and that's something I'm actually looking to explore. IRL is coming back, because since I've joined more of the Discord and having like more experience with the games and the cube setting, it's like making me reconsider if best of one is like the best way to go. It definitely is the most time consuming, and that you definitely hit on. That's like the reason why we use it, and there's nothing wrong with the fact that not everyone can stay there for 5 hours, but if you have the option to try out some other ways to play your games, I personally recommend it. I think best of three personally would be the most obvious choice if you have the option to. If you want a very skillful, very like if you have a lot of die-hard cube players or people that are just there for the day trying to hang out and want to have really good experience, I think it works best for players that are more experienced with cube, because players that are players that who aren't really great at drafting might not have a good time having to commit to their deck for that long, but that could also be a good point to learn. But assuming that the people you're invested with have want to play some of the most skillful games they can, best of three tends to work out. There's a few other things that you could try. There's this double elimination, which I think the thing that kind of sucks about losing early in cube is that you lose once, and then your ability to go like 3-0 is out, and like winning the cube gets really hard. So like double elimination can be a way to mitigate that. It tends to work better with 8 players though. Like with 6 players, yeah, but like with 8, I think it's definitely good to have a 4 bracket. There's also the round robin style, which is everybody plays everybody. That can be a little bit more of a nuanced setup, but it is a cool way to make sure to see all the decks play into each other and get more of a a read on like matchups and stuff. So there's a lot of different ways you can run your cube. But yeah, I'm really interested to see. I'm going to be exploring more ways personally, seeing like, okay, well, what other ways can we run the cube besides just like best of one Swiss, and seeing if there's any other, ways to improve upon that part of the experience. That's one part I don't like, that you lose once and then you're done. So kind of with you, I'm definitely with you on that. Any other things we want to bring up as far as playing goes? I guess I should finish with, the last thing I want to mention, before I pass it off to Connor, is that, this is more of an etiquette thing than anything else. And really, because it makes the cube owner's responsibility for cleaning up a lot easier. It's just sort your cube deck when you're done. So take the basic energies out and put those away, and then put the rest back. I don't. Sometimes players don't mean to, but it can get really screwy with the cube if you shuffle back in basic energy, or if the cube builder has to spend all that time like dividing all of that stuff up. So a common courtesy that you can provide, especially if you're new to cube and you might not realize it, but when you're done with your deck, sort the basic energy out, put them where they're supposed to go, and then ask, hey, do you want this? Do you want the rest of these to go into this cube stack here? Or sometimes the cube builders might tell you to not sort out your energies. I know I had a friend who wants to take pictures of all the decks, but he didn't want to have to like waste everyone's time to do that, so he just did that when he went home. So that was an instance where he did not want the energy sorted, but more often than not, players do. So just lend a helping hand, be a courteous cube recipient, and help each other out. But Connor, anything else you want to throw out on this last part of this playing part of it?
No, I definitely agree, and not just energy, but any other cards that the cube builder asks for. So like in my cube, SP basics are not in the cube naturally at all. They're only given for free when the player drafts level X. So things like that, it's really easy to go through a cube and be like, oh, there's basic energy, pull it out. Now it's still really annoying. Like if you're shuffling up this cube, everyone deals out packs and there are like 10 cards left over. It usually means there was a deck full of energy shuffled in, and now people have to spend the next 10 to 15 minutes looking through all their cards and pulling out the energy. Then you have to shuffle the cube again, and you have to deal it into packs again. So you've literally doubled the amount of setup time by not sorting your energy out. But, I've seen cubes where level X's are given out for free. I've seen cubes where basics and mid-stage ones are given out for free. Any card that should not be in the draft pool that the cube builder asks you to sort out, be sure to sort that out, because it saves so much time down the line. It saves the cube builders time. If you're going to draft with them again, it saves your time. It literally saves, 4, 6, 8 people's time when you just do that. And then there's, I don't know, everyone's happy with each other. If you don't do that a couple of times, then it's pretty easy for people to get sour with you and not want to play with you because your etiquette is poor. So definitely be polite, be courteous to the cube builder, do what they ask of you, and then you'll have a much better time.
Yeah, I definitely agree. So I guess the last part about this, and this is something I definitely wanted to touch on. We touched on a little bit last episode, actually, but it's probably something I'm sure a lot of people are wondering, and it's going to be, I guess, a lot of questions towards you, Connor, because you've been in here a lot longer than I have as far as, like, Cube Discord and everything, and I'm really here to hear your thoughts. It's the future of the Cube community. We've been very blessed to have all of this, this rise in popularity. A lot more people have gotten into Cube over the pandemic, which is, on paper would have been very surprising because Cube's a very, in-person activity, or at least it used to be. And, 2 or 3 years ago, we never really had the sense of community like we do now. But with the pandemic, and even before then, more people have been getting into Cube, into the Discord, into the community, and we've seen that grow. And I think events have really fueled that. Your Cube Leagues, your Champions Cube, your Team Challenge, and so forth. I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are, like, as far as events go, like, how do you see that changing as far as, like, when the new competitive season starts in Pokemon?
So I see it in a couple of aspects. One is that people are going to be playing events on the weekends, and they're not always going to have the chance to draft for Cube League, and I understand that. So especially when events are in full swing, we may see a drop again, and that'd be unfortunate, but it happens. But in the same respect, if people are taking their cubes out to events, they're playing with friends, they're playing with new players, exposing Cube to new audiences. The Cube community is drastically bigger now than it was pre-pandemic for a lot of reasons. So, once all of these players bring their cubes to events, they bring in more and more people. The growth rate is going to be exponential for the format. So the format as a whole is going to get bigger. So will that counterbalance the loss in attendance for Cube League because of events? I really don't know. So I'm optimistic for the group in general and for Online Cube in general, because the community is going to, once people get back into events and people see cubes everywhere, the community is going to continue to expand and expand even more rapidly, because it's going to be so easy for people to be exposed to Cube. Whereas right now, if you're not already in Cube circles, then it's going to be difficult for you to actually even come in contact with the format. So there's that aspect. And then there's the other aspect, which again is kind of there's a duality to it, and that is some people will think, why would I play Cube online when I could play Cube in person? Like, if I could use that same time, if I have a group, and I could play that Cube in person. And I see that in two ways as well. So for me, playing Cube in person is a really fun social experience, but playing Cube online in tournament format is a really fun competitive experience. So to me, they kind of scratch different itches. And I think that the competitive aspect of Cube is unmatched as far as, things that I enjoy doing just in general. So like, if someone's like, hey, you want to get together and play Cube this day, I'd be like, and maybe it was the Cube League draft day, I'd be like, oh yeah, that I'm totally down, but I have this thing at 12 that I need to do first. I don't think I would miss the Cube League draft for almost any other activity that I didn't absolutely need to do, so obviously life commitments, that's a totally different story, but I'm going to hold Cube League in a really high regard because it is a totally different experience than you can get in person. It really is. It's a higher level of competition. It is a higher level of skill, higher level of deck building than we see in person at all. I would say just flat out. But it's not the same social experience. You're not sitting around with your friends. You're not actually playing with cards. And some people are going to prefer that experience. I know we have people in the St. Louis area who have said that exactly. They just don't like playing Cube online. They like playing Cube in person with their friends. That's totally fine. Different things will be great for different people. So I don't know where people will end up on that line either. Will people decide? I'm sure at first, people will be going back to Cube in person because they can, and they haven't been able to do that. But as they do that, and as they, think about that versus Cube League, where will they end up? Which side will they end up on? Where will they end up at as far as preferences go, as far as scheduling, as far as, desired time commitment and allotment? And a lot of that really remains to be seen. So I don't know exactly where online Cube will go. I don't think it'll die by any means, because the Cube League existed before the pandemic. It was a lot smaller, granted, but we hadn't even been exposed to nearly the same number of people. If the group is a fourth the size, you would expect the events to be a fourth the size. And that has, as the group has exploded, the size of our events have grown a lot as well. So will our events shrink a lot? Will they grow even? I really don't know. I hope they get bigger. I hope we get Cube Leagues upward of 50 or 60 people as more people become exposed to the formats through tournament play and through seeing people play at tournaments. But right now, given that things are just starting to reopen, we really haven't had the opportunity to look at any kind of trends, look at, how our events are doing, other than Cube Weekend, which Cube Weekend is a pretty low priority thing anyway. So I would expect Cube Weekend attendance to change with the wind, more or less. But Cube League and Team Showdown and these bigger events, they're going to be more of a toss-up. And I sincerely hope that they will persist and even grow moving forward, but I just don't know right now, and I am definitely uncertain about that.
Well, it's interesting too, because one thing that there's a few things that I can do on the Cube Discord that I can't do in person is that I can't draft with the same people that I can in person that I can online. I mean, we're very spread out. Even the admin team itself is spanned 3 different countries. If not more, then I can't draft with all those people at the same time as much as I would like to. But in the Discord I can. So that's something that's interesting. It's some certain parts of the community still manifests itself within that. We're all connected through the Discord. So I definitely picturing sort of a blend. I'll have my experiences in IRL as well as I'll have my experiences online. I can definitely see myself still doing the Cube League. Because Cube League's fun, and I really love that competitive experience. But I also can see myself, also maybe every now and then, if not more, getting together with the St. Louis crew and doing those cubes as well. So pretty much having the best of both. And something that you brought up last time that I want to talk about is that more people will get introduced to cubes by virtue of that there's more cubes happening at regionals, which is another point I wanted to make is how cubing at regionals was before just kind of limited to your one testing circle, but then it's expanded by the fact that you have now these connected players. So I now know people from Michigan, from Atlanta, all these different people coming in, and I might be introduced to new people I haven't even met before, but we all can just cube together. That didn't really happen before. I mean, maybe in certain groups it did, but you wouldn't really go to a regional and expect to cube someone else's cube before that you just never met. But that's a reality now. There's going to be there's most definitely going to be cubes firing from the Discord at these regionals that people are attending. That could honestly bring in a whole new chunk of people that have never been exposed to cube before. Because honestly, and the barrier to entry in the online space is that you have to use stuff like Untap, Google Sheets, and it can be sort of a turnoff for people. But rather if I have a cube shuffled up ready to go, how easy is it for a random player just to sit down and just learn the rules of cube? They know how to play Pokemon, so we could definitely see an increase in community in that as well. So I don't know, what do you think about that part of it too? The fact that Cube is more accessible via regionals and that kind of experience.
I think that's going to be incredible. I think sitting down with people from the group, that you've never met in person, and playing a cube like you might play online, but together, I think it's going to be an amazing experience, and I do think that's going to help the community expand too. As far as the connected note, you are never going to have a more connected environment than you are on Discord or online in general. There is never going to be an easier way for me to sit down and play a cube with Best Pal Alan Davi in the UK and Brazil than online. We've talked about everybody kind of flying to the US and getting together for some big event, and sure, that might happen in the future, but that is a massive undertaking. Like, that's not just, hey, it's 11 on a Thursday and people are off work for some reason, you guys want to play. There's never going to be another way to do that other than online. So I definitely agree, and I think that there's going to be a lot of value in that just inherently. So I'm excited for both aspects on that. With the other questions and the other things that we've talked about, I've been very uncertain, kind of hesitant, even kind of sad and worried that things might fall off in the future. But with this one, this is all excitement. Super happy, super excited to both play with people in person that we've only seen online and still be able to get together with a global community of Cube players and play anytime we want online. So that's just a great thing, I think, that's come out of this.
Yeah, definitely. And that's one of the things we have to think about when we're returning back to IRL. It's a whole, in some ways, like, it's a whole different world now. That, like, we've now gone through the pandemic and we've experienced, we've grown from that, and our communities have adapted to it. And so now, we've made it through all of that, and now we get to bring all of these new aspects of the community into basically like where we left off before events got shut down. So I'm excited. I think the Cube League will still be in a thing. I think having more people to cube with at regionals is going to be really fun. So I'm optimistic. And my last thing that I really wanted to ask, and I'm really curious to see what you feel is, do you ever what are your goals for as far as expand or the Cube community, or for Cube, like as far as maybe expanding the community? Like, do you have any goals?
I think it's hard to put any signpost goals as far as numbers or growth or event size or anything like that, especially right now where we don't even know if people are going to keep playing events online right now. But I do have some goals, some ideas and priorities as far as growing the Discord through in-person cubing, and that's just playing cubes at events and having a good time. People, when you're walking around events, you can see on people's faces if they're doing something cool, if they're having a good time. If you look at a table and there's a ton of really interesting cards, there's decks that never existed in standard, and like, that's cool. That's a fun time. And really, playing Cube and having fun with it is one of the best advertisements for the format that could possibly exist. So I know I'm going to be playing a lot of Cube at events, and I'm going to be extremely happy to answer any questions that people have coming by, like, what you guys doing? Oh, we're playing Cube. There's all this info about it. There's this great website, Cube Koga. There's this Discord that you can get involved in. And I will be the biggest advertisement for the Discord server, for the online community that there is. I am so excited to be able to promote that in person. And really, I think that the best thing that people can do for the growth of the online community is grow their local community and talk to people and play Cube at events and have fun, because people are going to be drawn to that and people are going to want to get involved.
No, I definitely think that's great. And honestly, that's the solid truth. Like, the best way, if you wanted to, if you want Cube to keep seeing growth, is to promote it in your local communities. Like, if you're a Cube builder on the fence of building your own Cube, the best way you can advertise the Cube community is just build your Cube, get other people interested in the format, or if you know someone with a really cool Cube, get people together, make it happen. And that's one of the best things to hit on, is that I think Cube will keep seeing growth, especially now that we're coming back in person. And Cube is can be such a social activity as well. So it's a really exciting thing to continue on with, and I'm really excited to hear and to see how the community grows and how more people are introduced to it. I know for me personally, I'm really excited to keep making content for Cube. The podcast definitely isn't going anywhere, so don't have to worry about that. But hopefully more live streams can happen, and hopefully bigger live streams can happen too. I would love it to see if even just more content creators picked up Cube, because it's such a interesting topic to go over. And So that's my goal at least. Keep the cube content going. If not, keep adding to it. So I think honestly this has been quite a quite a longer episode, and it's been an exciting one to talk about. Definitely a lot of optimistic energy here, and a lot of excitement to return back to IRL. So Connor, any last things before we wrap this one up?
So closing thoughts. I don't know. I feel like I've gone over everything that I kind of had built up on the topic. Definitely a lot of excitement for sure. Just being able to see our friends again, play Cube in person, play actual cards, and have that social experience that makes Cube so fun. But also some mixed feelings, at least from me, having spent so much time and so much effort on growing the online community, the Discord that we have, and hoping that we're able to maintain what we have, if not improve it. So it's not bittersweet because nothing bad has happened, but I'm a little bit nervous for sure. In addition to being so excited.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just looking forward to like having everything open up again, and then just seeing what we can do more with Cube outside of just online events. And the online events itself are still super sweet, and they get better and better each time. So I just feel like there's gonna be more opportunities for Cube going forward. That's fair.
Yeah, definitely no shortage of opportunities for Cube moving forward. It's there are going to be more opportunities for you to play Cube both online and locally than there have been in the past, or probably ever were, especially locally. And with Cube Koga and all the tools that exist now that didn't exist before, even more ways to play either on the Discord or even just in your own personal group online. So it's Cube is in a really good spot overall right now, and just really excited to see how that continues to grow and where it goes.
Yep, I am as well. And I think we talked long enough about returning to IRL. We're really excited to hear and see your guys' experiences return back. Make sure if you're in the Discord, when you guys do your cubes, share your pictures of your list, or at least share like your experiences. I definitely want to hear like what it's like for those players who haven't cubed yet IRL. Like, what did it feel like? What did you go through? Did any of the tips we outlined help you guys? Let us know. But that's gonna do it for us in this segment. Stick around. We'll be right back with the conclusion. All right, welcome back to this conclusion segment. So just quick reminder that P Cube series this weekend, Sunday, 4 p.m. Central. We're doing Vents Cube. You can sign up in the Cube Discord. You also need to sign up in Limitless. If you look in the Cube Discord, you can find the information for that. Should be a ton of fun. Again, we'd really like to break. We got to 12 players. That would be amazing. If not, check out the live stream on twitch.tv/P3podcast. We're getting a ton of freebies. We got a ton of free subscriptions to the Twitch channel. Now we're an affiliate. I've also given out code cards too, so you don't know what to expect. There's always something happening. Also, and we kind of hinted at this before, but there is still a way to qualify for Champs Cube. If you haven't had a chance to play anything yet, there is still one Cube League remaining. Carney, you want to talk about that at all?
Yeah, so the final Cube League of the season is going to be on June 19th. That date is confirmed, 12 p.m. CDT, as always. It is going to be Best Pal Al's Coin Flip Cube. It is a totally unique cube. I've never seen another cube like it. The player whose turn it is determines the outcome of all coin flips that are not special conditions. So cards that you have never seen play in Cube or any other format are suddenly here. They're super powerful, and it's a ton of fun. Al has really put a lot of work into balancing it. And I strongly recommend you hop in and see what it's all about, especially if you are interested in Champions Cube, whether you are a longtime player of the league or you've never played one. It is a ton of fun, and it will also qualify you for that sweet cash event. You could end up on stream. You could be the winner of the next Champions Cube, but can't qualify if you don't play in the Cube League. So definitely sign up for that as soon as signups go up, which by the time this episode goes up, the Limitless page should be live, and the announcement should be live in the Discord as well. So should be very easy to find that info and get signed up for that. But that's all I've got for the upcoming Cube League. Andrew, if you'd like to move on to the next thing.
Sure. Yeah. I just actually, we're wrapping up our current Cube League, which has been a ton of fun. It's the Mike and Jail's Delta Mutant Cube, and I just want to know what are your thoughts on the current Cube League? Personally, although I am the control player, I have thought it's been going really well. I really have enjoyed watching a lot of these games on stream or just tuning in on Untap when they happen. And it's been very exciting. I mean, I love all of the Cube Leagues that have happened as far as since I've been part of the Cube Discord, but this one's been particularly interesting. It's because we don't often run a mutant. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I've really had a great time with this league. I still think it's a phenomenal cube. I think some of the changes that are going to happen afterward are going to balance it even more. Some of the top end decks are definitely significantly stronger than some of the bottom end decks, but even the quote broken or overpowered decks are within a reasonable range of the decks around them, which is a huge accomplishment, especially for a cube that hasn't been played extensively for more than really a month. The cube's been around for a long time, but it was really tested once and then it came back to the forefront more recently. So just a huge accomplishment for the cube builders. It's been a great time. They have something truly, truly incredible on their hands as far as the cube that they've built. And I'm excited to see where they go with it from here. I think some of the changes they've discussed will make it even more balanced, even more fun. And I strongly encourage anybody who's interested to give it a try whenever they're able. It will definitely be run for the Team Showdown in the upcoming season, which will start in June, July. It'll start in August. And then, so it'll start in August. You'll have to sign up in August. And then it will be played in like October, November, or something in that range. it'll be a little while, but odds are Andrew will probably bring it up for a P3 series, and then you'll get to play it then just on a weekend for fun. So strongly recommend playing it if you haven't, and if you have played it, I strongly recommend playing it again because it's a great time. So
it really is. It's fun.
Yeah, been really happy with this one, and I'm really glad that we were able to do a mutant cube in the server. Also really glad that we were able to do a mutant cube that was not representative of what a lot of mutant cubes end up being, which is just like super high power, go as fast as you can, one shot, game over. There's a lot of intricacy and thought to the gameplay and the deck building in this cube, and for a mutant cube especially, I think that's a really exceptional accomplishment.
Well, and we talked about how many games you play as as far as the mutant cube gets ran, and I think one thing I've seen too is I feel like my understanding of mutant has grown a lot too, because I play out my games, right? But then I get to watch other people's games as well. So as someone who hasn't really had enough time spent in mutant, as I probably wish I could have, I feel like I'm making up for lost ground here. I've been able to watch a lot of mutant games. I mean, I'm commentating the draft as well as drafting the cube. It's also helps with that experience. So I feel like this definitely improved my understanding of mutant, which is, again, not something I commonly get exposed to.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, anytime you get to play something that you haven't played before, or just anything new in general, it can be a great opportunity to learn. And I know that my understanding of what mutant can be has really been expanded by this cube, because I have been exposed to so many mutant cubes in the past that have been very high power and really just revolved around one shot as fast as possible. And, while one-shotting your opponent very quickly in this cube is a very good thing to do, it's also very difficult to do. So really building out your strategy is so important, and seeing that level of intricacy in a format that I had previously considered to be pretty easy and pretty dumbed down as far as the complexity of game states, that's been really eye-opening. So I have a lot more faith in mutant now, and I have a lot more respect for it as a format, but I also think that it's incredibly difficult to build mutant in a way that makes it as interesting as this cube has. And I think the builders have done a lot of work on getting it there, but I don't want to undersell how much effort it is to get a mutant cube where they've gotten it.
Definitely. And that's part of the balancing thing that we look for, especially at these cubes that are slated for Cube League, is how willing are the cube builders willing to put in the work to get their, to balance their cubes. And, Mike and Jail really have put in a ton of work, and it shows. So hats off to them for really making this one come together for the league.
Absolutely.
So I mean, anything new going on?
Man, oh gosh. Back to Hearthstone Battleground. Really, I mean, I've been working a lot. I was in the office for the last couple of weeks, so that makes it a lot harder to kind of I don't know, do lots of stuff. Kind of, at least for me, like I will wake up at like 6 or 6:30 in the morning, and then I'll start getting ready for work pretty much right away, and then I'll get home around 5. So that's like, it's like 11 hours of my day where I can't really do anything that I want to, and then I am just tired for the last 5. Whereas when I work from home, I work from like 8 to 5, and then all the time outside of that is my own, and I can enjoy it. So, yeah, I don't know. Work. I guess
adulting.
Yeah, recently went to we've tried a couple of newer restaurants in the area that have been really nice. So I guess I haven't really talked about this that much on the podcast. I am a huge foodie. Like, I really, really love trying new food. I love cooking new food, cocktails and wine as well. Just the whole set. Really, really enjoy it. I enjoy experiencing new stuff and trying fantastic things. So tried a couple of new restaurants over the weekend. That was really exciting. It was a lot of fun. Lots of tasty food. And went to a new wine store as well that was really cool. You know, it's hard for me to say like, oh, you know, go to this place, because I'm sure, you know, like 10 or fewer of the listeners of this podcast are actually going to be able to do that. But I don't know. I encourage people to go out and try new restaurants and interesting stores in their area, just because supporting those kind of places, especially right now when they have so much potential to grow, but they're coming off of such a difficult time financially. Supporting your local businesses can be such a huge thing, especially in the food industry, which has been hit incredibly hard by the pandemic. So that's one thing. And then one other thing is Outward. It's a game that I've played a lot with my brother and just on my own before. And it's a game that I'm back playing again. It's a very heavy survival RPG, difficult, unintuitive in a lot of cases. They give information to you in the sense that like stats are pretty descriptive, but the all the mechanics are not necessarily clear. So I really love a dense game like that. I really love a dense RPG, and it has really an unparalleled sense of exploration. So I've really been enjoying that lately. But how about you, Andrew? What's been going on in your life?
So I mean, besides work, I got to see my friend Tyler on this past Friday. He runs a local game store that actually moved really close to me. He used to be like maybe 4 or 5 towns over, about 45 minutes away, but now he's like 20 minutes away. So he runs a game shop. I went up and saw him on Friday, and I was supposed to be there for Magic Draft, but it ended up not firing, which is fine. We ended up playing board games, and he took me. He's actually an ex-chef, so he's gotten to know some of the local restaurants, chefs around the area he's in. And we went to this place called Grit and Tonic, it was like a speakeasy bar. It was actually like in the middle of this like small downtown, and it was actually really good. The food was like phenomenal. It was like a really chill, low key place. And it just felt good going out with friends again. I know him and his wife pretty well, so I went out with them, and it was awesome. It was really nice to be at a bar and to be around people and just having a good time. And I haven't seen him in a little bit, especially because, you know, pandemic, it makes it really hard to do that. But I missed hanging out with him and his wife and his friends that come to the shop. So it was really cool. Really excited. Hopefully he has more events so I can go chill there some more. But I've been doing that. I saw him. It was great. And then Memorial Day was nice. I had a lot of family coming down. My cousin turned 1, so everyone was down to see the grandchild. So I'm really close with my cousins. So the family comes up from Chicago. They used to come twice a year, but they could not come last year. So it's them. They have like these triplets that are all seniors in high school I haven't seen. So, you know, for once I get to be the one not pressuring them, but like, prodding them about what they're doing after school, where I've been on the receiving end of that for so long. So, got to pay it back. But no, they're great. It was really nice seeing them. We played Sheriff of Nottingham, which
I love that game.
It's so much fun. I'm like trying to work them into more board games. So that's one I like to bust out, because you unleash so much chaos by just allowing all of these. Maybe you aren't familiar with the game. Basically, what you're trying to do is you're just trying to smuggle in contraband, but you're also trying to smuggle in, apples, bread, and stuff. So you have to. It's a deception game, and you have to. You take bribes. You cannot take bribes. Everyone plays around as an inspector. So and with my family, it's like it's a do or die depending on who's playing. So. And then with my brother, it turned into, my brother was just accepting tips. So everyone would just pay him like all this money, and he just let everyone through with all the contraband. It's just really funny. He ended up winning because of that too, which is impressive. But it was great seeing them playing those type of board games. So it was nice. It was really nice to see family. It's been a while since we've had everyone together. Playing board games, eating food, all that good stuff. So yeah, a lot of time with family. I think family and friends. So I'm pretty happy about that.
Yeah, it sounds like a great time. I love Sheriff of Nottingham. It's just such a fun game to pull out with people that are like not really into board games, but something that you can enjoy as board game enthusiasts still. I feel like a lot of party games are pretty toned down to the point where like they're not that fun for people who are really into board games. But Sheriff of Nottingham is approachable enough for people who are not board game people, and fun enough and complex enough for people who are, that I think it's in a really great middle ground there. So big props for Sheriff of Nottingham. If you have not played it, I don't know how easy it is to play online, but give it a play if you're able.
Yeah, speaking of, so I'm a huge board game fan. I have a ton. I just love playing new ones. My friend Joe brought one over during the party. That was really cool. I want to talk about it. I don't remember the name of it, sadly. It had to do with music. It was basically like, it felt like a deck builder, but with like pop music. So, it has this board that has like 5 slots on it. And each slot has like a color, and some have like 2 colors on them. And basically you have a deck that has matches those colors, but each one has like a part to a song. So like one has like the guitar part, the drums, the vocals, and like maybe some other instrumentals, but they're like to like pop songs and like other songs you'd recognize. So like it creates this weird mashup. So you have to like, each card has a certain level to it. So there's 3 levels to it. And you have to basically, you start with level 1 and you get points for every card you play. So then you try to like, one up the other person, but it creates this weird like mixed track to it. So you can have like the guitar part to like, like Down Into the Sickness with a Disturbed, with like the vocals of like Carly Rae Jepsen, but then like the drums to like September by Earth, Wind and Fire. It's just a really like interesting game that like I never really like I just not thought it existed. I wish I could remember the name of it. It was just really, I was thinking it's called Drop Mix. I think that's the name of it. But that was like one of the craziest games I've played. Apparently it was like a weird like Target exclusive that like isn't made anywhere. And he brought it over. I just was like not expecting it. So during the Q party, we played that. That was a ton of fun.
Yeah, I was really excited for that one, and watching you guys play it seemed super fun. But at that point, I was just like so wiped.
It is called Drop Mix. That is the name of it. It was really cool. You actually came out on Amazon. Actually, I didn't know that. It's only $40. I might pick it up. But yeah, it's so cool. The board, it has an app that it works on, so you can like play music. It like basically plays the music through the app, and it can recognize the cards because of if you know how like amiibos work, they have that like scanning part of it on the back. The cards have something like that built into it. They don't really notice, and like he had them sleeved in like Dragon Shield, like the clear ones. So like you just set it on the board, and it just recognizes the card itself. It was really cool. So huge shout out to Joe for bringing over Drop Mix and showing that to me. I'm gonna have to buy it now. But yeah, I mean, like pretty much, I mean, not a whole lot's been going on, just a lot of work. But I'm happy to be working.
Yeah, definitely I would be working. For
You know what?
sure.
The other thing actually I haven't mentioned is that I've been doing a lot of cube streaming, so that's also been taking up a significant amount of my time, which has been really fun. The P cube series has actually been a ton of fun just to work on, and I mean you've helped commentate it, which has been really cool, and so has Davi. Also, we ran Davi's cube last week. That was really interesting. I had not seen Davi's cube actually played, because I think the last time it was ran, I wasn't really around. The RSPK cube is really cool. The cards from that era, and you would think like a block cube with so many like samey cards would get really boring, but like there's like a ton of like diversity, and the decks would find the decks that people would make. Like JL's deck was really cool. How he was using like the Metagross, accelerates and energy, puts a damage counter on, and he would just use that to fuel a shady move with Banette, which I haven't seen that before. And I thought it's so simple but so cool to see like stuff like that get played in like these black block cubes.
Yeah, that cube is a blast. I love cubes that aren't all about just taking knockout, playing a line and setting up as fast as possible and taking knockouts as fast as possible. Cubes which really reward different kinds of decks, different kinds of deck building, just a lot of interesting things in that way. And the RSPK cube absolutely fits that to a T. So many cool things going on in that cube. So many fun, interesting strategies. So I'm a big fan.
Oh, I guess this is like the time to talk about it too. I actually ran my most recent cube on Memorial Day as well, my little cup cube, and that was really fun. So with that cube, for anyone who doesn't know, it's just all basic Pokemon that are under 100 HP. So everyone's like 90 or below. So it's like I think a 15 from each type. And the whole point is like, you're playing with all these different attackers, and you're playing with only 40 card decks and 4 prizes. So everything's really small. But like the way that the cube works is that you really have to like plan out your board states very carefully. And I had a lot of interesting games where like I was playing like a pseudo kind of spread deck, but it kind of came down to like, really making use of my resources. I had stuff like, or swoop teleporter to like switch out basics I was attaching to, or like Lucian's assessment to like switch around energy and like trying to find like optimal attackers. I was seeing that from like other decks as well. Like you get a lot of like really cool strategies. Someone's taking advantage of the Hippotas with 11th hour tackle, which does 50, and then if your deck has 3 cards left in deck, it does 180. Which is like really funny when it pops off. But it takes 3 energy, so you have to like plan around how you're gonna attack with that. And then we had another deck that was utilizing a Fliptini with a bunch of effects. So they're using like Fly and like Fliptini to try to like prevent damage. And they had like other different attacks that worked with it as well. So it was really cool. I want to run it again after making some changes to it, because it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I was actually pretty excited at the idea of playing in that one, but the day just didn't work out for me. So yeah. I'll be interested to give it another shot later on.
Yeah, I mean, I really took a lot of like when I saw everyone who also hasn't seen Omnipoke has a cube that really inspired this one. It's called All Gas No Bricks, and it's all basic. It's all basic in the sense that everything is played as a basic, but it features like a lot of evolution cards. Like stage 2s can be played down as basic. So the whole idea is that every deck is consistent, and utilizing your cube decks to like the fullest potential. So I took a lot of inspiration from that one. It's a really cool cube that I really want to play as well. It should be actually coming up soon to play in one of the cube series, but yeah, it's a lot of fun. I'm hoping to run it again sometime. Luckily, it only needs 4 people to actually play it, so getting a cube firing should not be that difficult.
Yeah, super excited for that one too. I don't know, it just seems fun. Like it's something fresh, it's something new. I always like new concepts on cubes that really kind of break the boundaries of what a cube normally is.
That's what I like as well. It's just something to switch it up and think about cube differently. And with like little basic guys, you do have to think about it differently, and like the value of certain cards changes just based on like the HP levels that are out there. Like having only 90 HP, and like cards will like really fluctuate between like 70 and 90. So sometimes doing like maybe 30 or 40 damage is like actually doing like a significant 2-shot. But like if it's on a like something small like a Pikachu, then it just changes the way you value cards. And honestly, on the same note, that's something I really like about Al's cube, like his coin flip cube also. really does highlight that. So if people haven't checked that cube out, and that's going to be coming up for the next cube league, definitely do check out that as well.
Yeah, Al's cube really makes you think about like HP totals and damage numbers in a different way.
Yeah.
It's hard to really explain exactly what I mean without just playing it, but you look at some cards, you're like, man, this doesn't seem that good, and then you see it in practice, it's like, wow, this card was actually nuts. And vice versa, some cards seem more powerful than they actually are. Not to say that they're like underpowered, but just in general, things like that.
Right. So I guess to really wrap things up, anything you want to bring up before we wrap up this one?
Nope, I think I'm all good.
All right, I am good as well. Hey, if you stuck it out this far, thank you so much for listening. I think that's going to do it for us. You've been listening to PQ, the one and only Pokemon Q podcast, and we'll see you guys next time.